That's your paint palette. That's your paint palette. This is Jason. And there's Jason right there. Fired. Ha! Fired. I'm fired.
Fired.
Welcome in, everybody. That's minus 15 sushi points, young Christopher. Yes, Dusty Hobbies. Welcome in. This is Jason Craze?
No.
I think this is the guy. I think this is him.
No.
I think this is him. Isn't that right,
Nope.
chat?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him?
Never heard of him.
Welcome in, everybody.
Chris is talking nonsense.
Wad, Big Bob, Hoosier, Paint Liquor, Papa Chicken, Captain's back in the helm.
Papa Chicken, they cut all of them. They cut all of them. I got my hair cut the day before I went to Gamma.
That's right. Colonel, how you doing? Blood Walrus. Oh.
Big Bob says this version appears to have a lot more gray than I remember. It's almost like I've been here for 10 years.
Oh.
There's a lot more gray today than there was at the beginning of this thing. And a lot more every day I have to deal with you know who.
That's me. Jason, there is... Well, no, I can't. Can't do that yet. I just laid it out there, chat. Big things coming this week. Big fun things.
What are we doing that's big and fun this week?
You'll have to wait and see.
I don't like surprises, Christopher.
I don't have any surprises. Or do I? Hey!
Or do I?
Oh, where's my little sound box? We
This
got
freaking
some
guy.
subs for After Ever. Resub for 9 months. Thank you so much. And Valder the Red also for 9 months. Wow. You guys are great. How are we feeling today, Jason?
I'm lost.
Why?
I don't remember what I was doing.
Here's a map.
Here's a map. Are we painting things? Do I
This is
paint
it.
things?
Jason,
Is that what happens here? Do we
Jason
paint
has
things?
been on the hero's journey, and he's back.
Do we paint stuff?
I think we do.
Do we paint little men?
We paint little men.
All right.
Don't drink that.
Oh,
Don't
No?
drink that.
I'm pouring some into my cup because
because it evaporated while you're gone.
my cup is filled with all sorts of. That's really gross.
You think your amoeba water?
It's not, I don't think there's amoeba in here. Maybe if we were to look at it at a microscopic level, there are some floaties. Yeah, there are some floaties there. Like,
Jason,
what
that is
exactly
like-
is that? If I touch
Jason,
it, do I
that
die?
is-
Ooh.
Put it on, Sanguinius.
So that goes over here. It's like a decal.
Yeah, it's like its own little transfer.
It is. Look at that.
Put it on him.
It's like a decal of like floaty pigment. That's all that is floaty pigment. I can get all of them, like with my finger. This is kind of fun.
Wow. I'm glad you all are here. Welcome. Today is Monday.
Pro Acryl. We sell floaty pigment.
That's one way of saying it. The water is dark. You cannot see below the surface. I wouldn't go in that water.
Oh, I wouldn't swim in a pool of that water.
No. How much money would it take
To what?
for you to swim in a pool of water like that?
Do I get goggles?
No.
I don't get goggles.
No
or,
goggles.
Or like a hair thing,
It's bare bones. You just jump right in. For real, not knowing what it is. Now the color, not knowing that it's pigment, because that's just paint.
Do I know it's creature free or is that up for grabs?
You know, I was about to say you'll live if you jump into it and you come out.
Live has a very broad spectrum of good to bad.
That's right.
Like,
you
just to
won't-
be alive doesn't mean a whole lot.
You won't die.
You won't die.
There are no creatures.
There are no creatures. If I know there's no creatures in it, then I'm jumping in because the bacteria and stuff are technically creatures.
Okay,
So there you go.
is.
I'm done.
$20. That's it.
If you ever have done a mud run, you legit pay to jump into stuff like
That's-
that. Yes,
that's
exactly.
very true.
Forget swimming, how much to drink it. Don't drink
Zero.
the paint water.
$0.00.
Don't drink the paint water.
Traveler Cedric, 15 months. Thank you so much. Look at all
Jason's
these
back
subs
and
today.
slapping a Primark.
That's right. Jason is back and slapping paint on Sanguinius is the title of the stream.
How we doing, boys and girls? Hope everybody had a fun time. Did Christopher treat you well when I was gone?
We had a great time. To recap, we demoed the brush-on primers last week.
Yeah.
We also painted up some Kamar gin.
Yeah.
We also did the demo of the matte varnish.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Now we're here.
Back with Sanguinius, the man, the myth, the legend. And Jason.
About that.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Chat. I knew it. I called it.
So about that.
Are you gonna switch it up?
No.
Oh.
I just don't remember how to paint.
Well,
how do you do this? I feel like I need glasses.
He threatened to take away Christopher points. I must cancel myself. Oh, no, I don't take away points. Oh. I just giveth them.
Wow.
I giveth them.
My glasses are opaque.
Oh, your glasses? I'm sure.
Not well taken care of.
A little dirty. Hey, no. Hey, I put it in your case. What are you talking about? Where's your little case? Okay. Oh, with the fingers and all. That's your sassy librarian look. Okay, he's pulling a Christopher. Here we go. Okay. Hoosier, I may have. Yes, you all try. You only get me in rare form every once in a while. Chat. Today's business day. Today is Monday. This is. Oh, what just happened? What happened to our? Looks good. We're gonna teach Jason how to paint today. Wizard's butt coffee, prisoner. Yes, that could also be Wizard's butt coffee. That's a good way of putting it. Pop Chicken. We've made it 6 minutes into stream and Jason hasn't blamed Jordan for a single thing being out of place.
I mean, there's still time.
He's looking around, chat.
There's still time, chat. There's still time. Everything feels pretty normal here. It feels like I could have been painting here yesterday.
I didn't believe that for a second. You're like, it feels pretty normal here. It feels pretty okay.
It feels not as horrible as I thought it would.
What are you doing, Jason?
I'm painting some black in the innards here before we get going too much more on the gold. I always forget, Space Marine hoopla. They have the rubber bodysuit thing. And we got to make sure that we get some paint on it before we get too much more detailing on the gold. Mm-hmm. And it's low-hanging fruit to not have to do anything complicated until my brain starts functioning again.
Jason, you missed out on some epic recitations in last week's streams. I don't know what you're talking about, Papa Chicken. Source. So, Jason, you were going to true metallic metal that armor.
I was?
No, I don't think so.
Feels like the right thing to do.
He hasn't noticed that all of his paints were switched out with apple barrel paint. Says Paint Liquor. Brain? What brain? Arctic Minis, welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. It is a beautiful Monday.
It is a good Monday.
It is a great Monday.
It's funny. I ran into a bird on the way to lunch.
I'm sorry, like casually or professionally?
Like professionally ran into a bird. Like I did it like a professional would have. It was a bird, and it took off flying from the curb.
Really?
Not like in the middle of the street, but from the curb.
Okay.
And hit my car.
Oh,
right on the A pillar.
Okay.
Like by the windshield. I was like, and it was like made the car move. It didn't seem to be that big of a bird.
Interesting.
It was like, thump.
Dang.
Yeah, and then it kind of
stumbled off.
Well, I didn't see it like corkscrew into the ground or anything. No.
How fast were you going?
I had just pulled out of the parking lot here.
Oh, okay.
So not very fast. Maybe 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I literally had just pulled out of the parking lot in front of the building. And then, thunk. It was funny because I ducked.
Okay.
It flew right at the windshield. I went...
In your car?
Yeah, and of course it smacks the A-pillar on the car.
In your car you ducked? I love that. Because I would have done the same thing.
It's like when you're watching things on your screen, right? And they do those jump scare ones and you duck. Like somebody throws a ball at the screen or something.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, I ducked. And I was like, oh, ha, 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 how silly of me. And it didn't crack my windshield or anything, but boy, it felt like a baseball hitting the car.
That's awesome.
It's awesome for everybody except the bird.
That's true.
Poor dumb thing.
He's just trying his best. Get out of the way.
He got in the way. He was on the curb.
You know what? Some of those birds, they have death wishes, I
He
believe.
was nowhere near in trouble. He was not even in a place where it's like, oh, I better move for this car that's coming by. He was on the curb. Like,
It's his fault.
yeah, it's his fault.
TK421 Monument. I tried your rattle can matte varnish. Absolutely great product. I can vouch for the great quality. TK.
It's stupendous.
It's awesome.
Miraculously stupendous.
I matte varnish everything.
I matte varnish my breakfast.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'll matte varnish anything. Just challenge me. I'll do it right now.
Like anything?
I'll matte varnish. Who is matte varnish? Really? You know?
Who is this matte varnish?
Clip the slow. He does not eat the paint. He does not do that on his breakfast. That was a test, chat, and you did not pass. See, he tested you right there. You know?
Oh, yes, of course. That was a test.
Right, Jason?
That was totally a test.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys failed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you could try the matte varnish on your hair. False. You could not do that. You cannot replace your hair gel with the matte varnish.
You can do as you so choose. Okay, so here's a question for you.
Okay. Here's
now
an
that I'm
answer for
painting
you.
this bodysuit stuff, I'm noticing that his bicep,
Yeah.
like his entire upper arm, has nothing on it. It's all like the bodysuit. Would that be black body glove, or would that be like armored, like superhero armor?
Point at it again. The.
Well, like see, like his back.
I would see. I think that
That
looks
would
like
have to be armored, right? You wouldn't have like this great armor and then on his back be like, oh, shoot here.
Maybe it's like some type of Kevlar substance or whatever. I don't know. Some black armor. I don't know. It doesn't look like armor. It just looks like, I don't know. What's that material I'm trying to think of? Stuff that Batman suit's made out of. Very interesting.
I painted black, chat.
Little Billy, I was able to use the brush on primer last night at 11:30 p.m. Awesome. It was awesome. Wish I could say the same thing about Chris.
Oh, man. I was just about to ask how you guys were getting along.
Little Billy and I, it's complicated. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes he buries me alive.
Like, hey, chat, did Little Billy and Christopher get on during the time I was gone? Did you have to referee? Is there a lawsuit? Bail money?
Hey,
where did we leave off?
You know what?
What did I come home to, chat?
For all of you who've seen Little Billy's submission in the February challenge, I'm just going to leave it at that. There's been some words.
Some words?
That's right.
What do you mean?
Chris gave me points on Friday. I did, Little Billy. I gave you points on Friday.
Did he take them away?
I haven't taken them away yet. I could instantly do that right now, instantly.
Instantly.
No. I'm a good person. Whoa! Jason laughed at that without even a hesitation.
I had some congestion that I was clearing up there.
Is that what the kids are calling it? Congestion? I see how it is.
Congestion there that I had to clear up.
I have another little fun thing that I found over the weekend that I thought Jason would like. But I'm trying to decide if I want to show him now or if I need to wait for the very opportune time of my adult life to show him. We'll see. Hey, Papa Chicken, question. Where's the tipping point between a miniature that is painted well and a miniature that is art? ? I know it when I see it, but I haven't been able to articulate it. That's an interesting question.
It feels like a loaded question because anything painted is art. I think you're defining art as something that has a good, better, best quality to it, which is incorrect. I'll just go flat out and say it. Art is done by all of us who put paint on minis. Now, if you want to say competition pieces, things that are more painterly, when does it become that? Well, when you try harder to make it that, right? A thing only becomes what you are calling it when you spend the time, invest into it to make it that thing, define it, make it happen. But you're limiting the entire world of art by saying that it sits above or somewhere out of reach of just the standard of painting would be the best way to look at that. And I say that in all respect to everyone involved, but there is no one who sits at a higher level of greatness because they can paint a miniature that, in a way that like Verco's Vault wants to buy it. Don't let that nonsense take over your thought process, right? Just because some rich guy decides to open up a museum of miniatures doesn't mean that now all of a sudden there's a judgment criteria that we all have to abide by. And I'm not saying that's what's leading people. So, but whether it's a competition or whatever, don't let any of that nonsense take over your thought of all of it being art.
Hoosier, what's the March challenge? We were talking about that last week. The idea we were playing around was that Jason had painted up a unit so that we do maybe like a unit of some kind.
Oh, I like that.
They just have to be like a cohesive team.
Yeah.
Paint up what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I like that. Paint up a unified, cohesive group.
Yeah. Like they got to look like they're on the same team.
Is there a minimum of like 3?
We were thinking 3.
I think 3
minimum.
makes sense, yeah.
If you want to do more than that, go
Nope, I think 3
wild.
makes sense. That way it's not limiting them to any specific type of thing they have to purchase or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could do 3 fantasy figures that all feel like there's but I think part of what we're trying to do is put them all in the same story.
Yep. That's exactly. So that is the March challenge. You heard it here, folks.
I like it.
Tomorrow we're going over the February challenge, so stay tuned for that tomorrow.
I like it, Chad.
And then we will get that all set up in the Discord for you after stream. Yeah, I like that. There we go. Done. Sold. Check that out. All right, I'm going back up here. There's a question. Twisty Farmer. I have a question about brush size. How do you pick the size and shape? And is there one size fits all for minis?
Not really a one size fits all. That's very subjective. I do know people who paint, the bulk of what they do with one size. Jordan, for example, paints with a number 3 round sable for 90% of everything he does, I would say.
Yep.
But it's not the only brush. I paint with a round number 4 and a round number 2 for most of what I do. It's the size range that I feel the most comfortable being able to get the most work done so that I'm not switching brushes all the time. So for me, I don't want to have 80 million brushes. The brush is a tool that can be as flexible as you need it to be. So you could wind up, finding one brush that you use all the time.
Yeah.
But having a complement of brushes that would range in, more sizes than just the one is always a benefit. I would say having one that is what you would call a superfine detail brush. It doesn't have to be like our X10, but something like a 00, something along those lines is always good for like dotting I's, getting in very hard to reach places. That's always a good one to do.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of the round, or what is called an artist's round brush. There are some companies out there trying to do different things by telling you that a cat tongue is the best brush to paint with and all that. So, it really is just your preference. But an artist round will create any shape you need for painting 3-dimensional objects. That's what I'm using here. It's just what you would call a standard paintbrush, artist paintbrush. It's a cylindrical shape that comes to a point. But, you might find yourself finding a brush, like a big flat brush is great for doing like tanks and terrain. So there are times where I use other shapes and sizes.
Depends on the scenario, I guess.
Yeah, but the 90% is my 2, my 4, and my 6. So,
cool. Mr. Blue, question. I struggle with blending. Is bad blending better than no blending?
Is bad blending better than no blending?
Yeah, that's the question.
Again, that's a tough one to answer because there's a lot of times where I might be painting and not be so worried about blends. I'm now missing a brush, Chris. Where's my 4? I'm sitting here trying to show off myself, and there's not. I have my 2 and my 6 are here. I don't have a 4.
6. Is there a blue one up there?
It's like this. These. Am I just missing it?
I had 3 brushes up there for you.
No, there were only 2 when I got here. Oh, wait. Is it?
Yeah,
Aha. Underneath. So I had my 4 and my 6.
There it is.
These are the 3 that I use. So from right to left, 2, 4, and 6. They're all just round artist brushes. Those are our Pro Synthetics. So that's kind of the spot to fall into. Flat brushes are nice for base rims. I actually like a number 6 round.
And then for all of you, just another reminder, our March challenge is going to be paint a unit. Like, they've got to be in the same story with a minimum of 3 models.
So Cynical Moral says, as long as it can fit a cohesive story for the group, it's good. Yeah, it's not being a battle unit is okay. So when we say unit, we mean a cohesive group that are involved in the same environment and story. I don't know if you do. I mean, I guess the answer is yes, but we really are talking about things that are more centric to, like a dungeon party or a military unit or a group of Marines or, something along that line. They have a unified goal. Mm-hmm. I think if you just paint 3 models sitting at T, right, like Alice and the Mad Hatter and the Rabbit is not a unit. I just want to make that clear. When we say unit, we're trying to make things that they would be cohesive in their presentation, right? So I don't think it's not a diorama storytelling thing. It's hey, these people all have a common goal. They are unified in their presence. They didn't just come from all ends of the world and get thrown into a mishmash, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like if I were painting Space Marines, painting a group of 5 Space Marines all from different chapters with their own colors does not a unit make in what I'm saying. They are not cohesive. They are individuals, right? It's like 5 mercenaries getting together is not a unit. I want something that brings the cohesiveness to the storytelling, that these people would rely on one another, things like that. So I think that's more what I'm talking about when I say that. Because the idea stems from when we paint the unit, we're painting in assembly line. How can I utilize similar colors in a way that gives models distinct personality, but pulls them all together and makes them quick to paint? That's what we're trying to get you to do here.
Mo's Magic. 102 months. Wow. Mo.
That's not even possible, Mo. I'm only 54 and 3/4.
102 months. And Bletz 2, thank you so much for that sub. Wow.
102's like
102 months.
50 years.
102 months. What is that? That is... Oh, wow.
Mo's got me reading a book that he's made.
8.5 years.
Yeah, it's silly, right?
Oh.
Silly.
Wow.
Silly. Thank you, Mo. Yeah, Mo's got me reading a book.
You still reading that one recommendation?
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
It's you know what? It keeps a pace that keeps me excited to read more. So I'll give it that. I still don't know that I'm bought into it 100%. But okay. It's being okay. It's better by far than God damn it, Donut. I'm listening to it, Cannibal. Yeah, I'm listening to it on Audible. So when I say read, I'm listening. But it is. It's God damn it, Donut. It stays at that. I cannot believe there's 7 books about this. Like, it just, that's what is wearing me out. I'm like, I don't know that I could listen to 7 books about this nonsense.
Jeff is your boss, Cannibal. Interesting.
So, Jeff Hayes is amazing. Jeff is your boss who wrote the book? What do you do, Cannibal? Iterator asks, with indirect sunlight that can hit your paint racks, is that bad on longevity of paint? No. So long as they're not in, like, 100 degree, like under a magnifying glass type heat in that indirect sunlight, you should be fine. Oh, he does all the voices. Gotcha. The voice actor. Gotcha. Prisoner, you're on book 3. I don't know. You have a hard time convincing me there's any reason for this story to go more than 1 book, but I guess I'll learn. It's a very large cursor, Chris.
It is. I did that on purpose just to help with
finding it on your screen.
Mine, like if I want to like show you something, it's like, oh, look at the cursor.
Yeah, he has this huge green cursor on the screen, which is nice.
Kurgan, thank you so much for that Prime sub. Appreciate it. Oh, mostly do marketing communications work. I answer all the customer service emails as well as other stuff. Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so I got at least a layer of black in there, which is the hardest part to do. So that lets me start back on the gold. I think last we polished off with some of the brighter yellow that I glazed over the top to kind of bring it all into focus. And I think I kind of want to do that. Do I want to do that again? I don't know is the answer. I just don't know.
Clarkatron asks a question. What did you guys think of Goober Town's video on freeze thaw cycles? I've definitely had paints from Scale 75 that turned into the putty in shipping, but everything Pro Acryl has been perfect.
Well, we freeze thaw test all of our formulas triple, right? So they get frozen, thawed out, frozen, thawed out, frozen, thawed out. And we do that to minus 18C. So below minus 18C, I can't guarantee anything because that's where you start to have crystallization. Crystallization causes its own problems. Nothing water-based is going to survive that and be usable in the way that it was pre-freezing like that. So there just isn't a product that's going to last. I mean, you can put things in there that help with, your freezing point, but then they don't act like the paint you want. So, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he did it. He showed himself, and I don't know if it was for fun, he showed himself sticking the paints out in the snow at his house. I'm hoping that was just for visual. I don't think that's actually how he did it, but I don't know. Some of his tests I don't understand the way he set it up if it's very scientific. It's like all those guys, when I watch Squidmar try to do a test, it's got so many fallacies in the way they do the tests. So it's very subjective, but they're fun. And I love Brent. So I think, Brent, everything he does comes with a real honesty to it and a really good approach. But I don't know the math behind what he did. I didn't pay that much attention, so maybe he gave better information, right? Who'd freeze their paints anyway? Well, they get frozen in transit is the big thing, right? So a lot of people in colder climates worry about buying paint in the winter because if you order, especially if you get it delivered when you're away from home and it's like sub-zero outside and they get delivered at 10 a.m. and you don't get home till 5 or 6 after work, then all of a sudden they've had the ability to sit out in sub-zero temperatures for enough time to solidify or to crystallize, and that's bad. It just is the way it is, right? But yeah, USPS does. I don't think anybody would do that on purpose, right? You're not trying to freeze your paints for any reason. It's just that in transit, I think he was trying to answer that big question, like, if you are not in control of your paints when you're ordering, do you have a problem when you get there? So if you recall, he left some of them out overnight for some and left some of them in a freezer for others. Yeah, that could be. Yeah. That's why we freeze thaw test ours, because we can't be in control of if they sit in a truck at a depot overnight. We want to make sure that they'll survive. The insulation of the bottle, the insulation of the box, the insulation of the truck should keep things from getting too ridiculous, right? So we have a lot speculation we have to do, but we put a lot of pride in our formula being freeze-thaw tested. And that's what he found. None of our paints operated any differently after he froze them a bunch. He kept whittling it down as paint lines had problems, which most of the competition did. We get it. We want to make sure that doesn't hit us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know what my next step wants to be is my problem here. So I'm thinking if I wanted some orange brown, perhaps. Perschmaps. That's not any of that. There it is. Take some orange brown. This is the point where we're just playing around. I kind of want to start with the airbrush, but let's do a layer or two and see if we can get some response I like. And then we'll move to the airbrush. I could do this filter with an airbrush a lot quicker, but I want to make sure that we are not just moving to that for no reason. I want everybody to get a good feel for what's happening and not have to rely on an airbrush if you don't have to.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking at here are areas where I've got, maybe a little bit of the mid-tone greens, jades showing still. And I'll kind of glaze the orange brown into those areas.
What did you see the thing him and Casey are launching as a decal alternative? Seems cool. Alternative. Yes,
I did not.
I did. It seems very interesting. It's kind of like the same thing I think they use for nails, like doing design on nails, I believe.
Oh, it's the thing that...
yeah, it's like a little rubber silicone stamp.
Yeah, it's actually a product we were working on with Skelleby. I wouldn't be surprised if it were something that they were doing with... There's an Instagram artist named Skelleby. And it is. It's like the nail press has a silicone stamp that you can make various things that you put paint on and then press the silicone onto it, right?
Browntown Games, welcome in.
Yeah, we tried to prove it out very hard, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work reliably enough for us to stamp our name on it. So all the power in the world to them. I do not trust that it would be a good product to back. It's funny because I have not seen anything that Brent is doing. I'd love to speak to him about it and give him all of my information because I did research on it for over 6 months, and just not a viable thing in my opinion. As a product developer, I wouldn't release it. It was not reliable enough on the trust you have to have at the end game to stamp your model. And it did not provide that trust. I have somewhere around here. There's a bunch of Space Marines that have little fishbone symbols on them. Chris, you may have seen them. They have little
fishbone.
They have little fishbone.
Actually,
like fishes that are skeletons of fish.
I don't think
they have
I've seen
that
them.
stamped on their shoulders and stuff.
And that's what you tried it with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Aaron has a question. I've been trying non-metallic metal with PA mahogany, yellow ochre, bright yellow ochre, and pale yellow, but it always looks a little like yellow armor, not non-metallic metal. Any ideas without seeing my work? ?
Mahogany, yellow ochre, bright yellow ochre, and pale yellow, but it always looks like yellow armor. It means you're blending too much. You're not allowing your darks and your brights to sit in close enough proximity to give the contrast of a reflective surface. Is 100% your problem. Because your colors are spot on what I would use. I mean, I could make those colors work great, so I'm not worried about your colors. It's placement. Like, look what we're doing here. See how I have all these streaks of dark and bright right next to one another? That's what's giving me the location of shine. And color becomes secondary to all of that, right? I'm just playing with color. I'm using whatever colors I, drum up to kind of get creative here. But the reality is that you are not giving yourself enough area on the surface for the shine to seem like something of its own. It's just looking like a highlight, I'm imagining. It's the biggest issue when doing non-metallic metal, right? Is that you get into those situations where it just looks like blended color because your brain is used to going from one color to the next, taking steps to get there, blending between your colors. And you'll notice on this, I'm not blending a whole lot at all. I'm literally just smacking color on there. Do a super zoom so they can see how messy this is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm just sketching right now, like where I want brightness, right? I've got a very bright line on the outside of the calf muscle coming down here, and then I'm blending into a little bit of not so bright, and then immediately into the darkest color that I got here, which is like Payne's gray. Right? And I'm still like just sketching color on there to find where I want those bright reflections and stuff like that. And then I'll smooth them over as I go. And the way that I'm doing this is very different from how I normally teach you to do non-metallic metal, because I wanted to show the process that I use when thinking about where reflection goes. Normally, I just start doing it because I have a very high confidence in figuring it out. So I just start throwing color at the model, and I don't have to go in and sketch where the brightness is going to go. I start from a dark color and move to my brightest color. So my brightest highlight never exists on the model until I'm done. Right? We talk about in the last video, the deets and doots.
That's right.
Right? And the deets and doots are the last points of contrast you put on a model to really get the shine located on it. That's the way we did the gold on Antonio LT Gray.
Yeah,
right? We
Aaron,
went from
check
dark
that
to
out.
bright, and there were no bright reflections placed on this. You didn't even know where I was going to put them, except that you could see them build up through the midtones, high midtones, low highlights, mid highlights, high highlights. You go through that whole staging from dark to light because it's just really an experiential thing or an experience-based thing where I've done it for so long. I can start with black primer, build up, and be pretty much close to done the way I want to by going brighter and brighter colors along those steps. Here, what I did is I started with bright colors and sketched in where I wanted the light so that I could show you where my brain goes in picking a light source and a directionality to my reflections. And now I'm having to go back and, put in dark reflections and blend in midtones and all of that. So this is a much more, how would you say, balancing act. It's a teeter-totter. I put a little bit of bright on the model to get where I want the bright reflections, and I put a little dark on the model to get dark reflections. Then I go back and add some midtones and brighten those areas up, and then maybe some darkness to darken those down as I refine it all. So for me, this takes longer because it's outside of my normal operating procedure, but gives the same results. So again, if you're struggling with non-metallic or, reflective surface painting, we call it, go back and watch some of the videos and some of the streams where we dive in and we talk about, when is the time to stop blending and make a big jump into contrast.
I just posted that link for you, Aaron, too. That is the non-metallic gold workup video. You probably find that useful for your question as well, based off of what Jason was just talking about.
But your colors are perfect. That's a great choice. It's like you have to get through your midtones and then jump up to the brightest color. You skip a whole stage or two or three versus how you would normally paint to create that contrast. Like right now, I'm glazing back over all my brightest pale yellows, and I'm going to have to go back and reinforce those pale yellows again because now I don't have that brightness anywhere. Papa Chicken.
TK421, when using your paint with an airbrush, does it need to be thinned?
You can thin it. Does it need to be? No. Like all the base coats that we did on the wings and stuff here, we did without thinning.
Yep. Check out those VODs.
So you
too.
don't have to. You can, right? The way that we describe it to people that are asking this question is that if you want to thin Proacryl, the main reason you should do so is for opacity, right? You don't have to thin Proacryl to make it usable for painting models. Most of our competitors, you spend a lot of time thinning them to make them usable for painting on model surfaces anyway, and then you thin for opacity on top of that. Ours, you don't have to thin just to be able to use them. They come out of the bottle ready to use. And then you thin so that you can either see through them more or less. Does that make sense? That's kind of the gist of it, if you will.
TK, we also, if you go on our YouTube channel, I'll send you a link to the airbrushing the vehicle gives you some really good examples of that. Let's see. Send it to you. Here you go. Boop.
Go back to bright pale yellow. So that orange brown gave us kind of that yellow ochreish look, right? Because I'm glazing and I'm going back over these pale yellows, these greens and things like that. So I'm being able to get this color interaction in a way that isn't just by picking, the specific color I want. It's going to show through all these colors beneath. So I'm putting on very thin layers as I move color to color. And now with bright pale yellow, I just want to find some edges again and our bright spots again. So this is basically a white for how bright it is.
Yeah.
And this is where I will just, because there's a lot of gilding and such on his armor that I'm starting to lose as a detail point with all of my glazing. And I want to find a little bit of that again. I'm going to go back and do some of this edge highlighting. And catch some of these embossed areas. And this is kind of what I'm talking about when I say you got to know when to just make a jump in value and put, I'll be damned.
It's a bright color on there.
Yeah, right.
It makes a huge difference.
Because this is what starts bringing your shine into focus when you make this big jump. Again, it might not be a lot of paint you're putting on. I'm barely kind of poking the brush along these spots. This becomes a lot of contrast. All of a sudden, that whole area and detail on that knee hinge comes into focus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. Now, remind me what you were going to do with the airbrush earlier. Essentially, the glazing.
Yeah, I'll still do it, but I'm going to do this first.
Got you.
What the airbrush allows me to do is blend my really rough color placement that I've done so far with the sketching.
Yeah.
The airbrush will come in and allow me to use it as a filter with very thin colors to cover a lot of that up. And then when you come in and do stuff like I'm doing right now, which is adding, very defined opaque lines, because this is not glazing. This is just full volume, bang, put the color on the model. This then kind of refocuses the model. Okay, so the base layers are really sketchy and not blended. Somebody asked earlier, and I don't know that I finished answering, to blend or not blend, right? I apologize. I'm just not remembering as I'm talking about blending that we didn't get all the way through that answer.
It was a tough question.
It's not really. I mean, whether or not blending is better, bad blends are better than no blends.
That's what the question was. Yep.
Right. Is a function 100% of your preference on how your model looks. If you set out to have a model that looks completely smooth and blended and beautiful like that, then yes, bad blends are worse than no blends at all, right? Because you have a goal of having it be beautifully blended. If you're trying to create a model that looks great and you don't have that concern initially, then I would say, depending on how bad your blends are, that's again a subjective term. Like, what is a bad blend? If it's a blend that doesn't meet your expectations but still looks okay, then I don't think it would ever be worse than no blend, unless it just missed your expectation by a country mile, right?
Yeah. Papa Chicken. So is it that you can't blend, or is it that when you blend, it has to be really tight and confined to a small space?
What are we talking about? For non-metallic metal?
I believe so. Might have to clarify that one, Papa Chicken.
Well, you can definitely blend. Look at Mashik. Look at Flame On Miniatures.
Yeah.
Right? Mashik blends like a madman.
He does.
Right? But his models start off as hardly blended at all. They're not blended. They're just bulk lines of color that define where all of his shine and reflection go. And then he goes back and blends in between each of those bands of color to bring the model to its final state. And that looks amazing as a nice, smooth, gently blended metal. So yeah, you can blend. You can also do it very sketchy and still make it feel like metal. Right?
Little Billy. I received some comments on some models I painted calling it both saturated and unsaturated in their respective parts. Though it meant well, that was not my intention. How do I ensure a balanced level of brightness with pale skin and bright armor?
So, pale does not mean bright, first off. So, I guess I would need to understand when you're telling me that you want to do pale skin, what does that look like to you? What do you feel like that needs to look like? Right? I'm going to bring some brightness into this area here. Kind of right down.
Sanguinius down feather body pillow coming soon. No, Aaron. You can't find them anywhere online.
So back to this, like if you're saying saturated and unsaturated in different spots, I guess I don't understand what the nature of the critique was and why you're unhappy with the critique you received. If you're doing pale skin and bright armor together, you could be losing touch with material focus because you're thinking that pale skin needs to also be bright and its value is being too high compared to the armor. One of them has to be in contrast to the other because they're different materials. It'll be very rare to have, like even an albino in white armor, the skin is going to be darker than the white armor. unless the armor's just beat to crap, and then the skin could be lighter. You can tell stories that way. But the skin's still going to be darker because skin has blood and fat and all the stuff underneath it that darkens it up, even if it's pale, right? It still has the pink and the reds and greens and purples of flesh underneath it, whereas the armor is just painted. So it doesn't have a lot of layered color. It's just what it is. It's either metal or painted metal or whatever you've decided you're doing your storytelling as, right? So one of them, pick it to be darker than the other and stick with that. And then all of a sudden you've got your contrast and not having to fight with that, right? It's like if you're painting something that has a lot of bright colors, like I'm doing gold, non-metallic armor and white wings. But you see how my white wings, I've chosen to go with these colors that ultimately darken it down when I start putting polish on the armor. Right? Because the brightness on the polish of the armor will be more reflective than the white of the wings. If I don't make that decision early on to have one brighter than the other, then at some point in time they fight each other and look like a disco ball. Right? You get to a point where it's just tough to distinguish what's the brightest thing on the model, and that causes you a problem with contrast and identification of material. If it's metal and it's reflective, shouldn't it be brighter than the other thing? You know, those are the questions you have to ask yourself.
Sarcastic Grandpa, sub for 7 months. Thank you so much. We always appreciate those subs.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And Papa Chicken's question for the blending, going back to it, really connecting these dots here. When blending has to be tight and confined to small spaces, he was asking for specifically non-metallic metal.
No. So let's back up. Mm-hmm. Blending is a technique of making two colors work together by creating let's in layman's terms, a third color where they match, right? Because if you just do white and you do it next to black, then those don't blend. But if you blend them together, you get white, gray, black, right? And depending on how much space you take to do that, could be a lot of whites to grays to black, to where white's just a little strip, black's just a little strip, and there's 15 different colors of gray in between, and that looks like this really smooth gradient like you would get in Photoshop, okay? That's blending. Blending is the technique you use to get there. The difference in what I think you're talking about is, yes, you can blend anything you want with non-metallics or not blend. I don't think we have the Thanos up here, right? The little Thanos.
Oh, I know where it is.
We should always keep him around if we can. I'll show you that because we did non-metallic metal with 0 blending on Thanos. So this will be a good example of telling you what I'm trying to get across here. It's not about the technique that you use as much as the distance that blend takes when you're talking about reflective surface painting. Non-metallic metal, glass, plastic, patent leather, whatever. If it's a reflective surface, you need to be able to draw your blends into tighter areas because your contrast is created by those points of brightest reflection and darkest reflection. Okay? So when we look at Thanos here, you see none of this is blended. Do a super zoom for me. Mm-hmm. No blending at all. There's 0 blending on this entire model. None of the colors, nothing. This was all showing you what you can create without any blends. Right? So it gives it a very comic book feel because there's not, well, that nowadays with the digital coloring of comic books, there can be more blending. But, you know, this is all done with bands of color. Right? You can see the individual bands of color and lines. There's 0 blending done there, right? It's a bright little semicircle, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. But it gives me the feel of non-metallic metal. It gives the same shine. So it's the placement of light and dark that makes a thing look reflective and shiny and hard surface, right? The blends are a choice you make on how you want to deliver the visual. This works just as well as this at getting across the idea of gold, right? They just do it in different ways. This one's more blended, right? So it's going to look a little bit more realistic. This one, more cartoony, but much higher contrast, right? Which makes it look even shinier. So you can do whatever you want. The blends, you can imagine here, if I were to blend back, because this is how, okay, this is interesting, because this is how Mashik from Flame On paints. He would have done this exact thing on this model, and then he would have come in with a mix between this color of circle right? This pale yellow and this bright pale yellow, made a mix and blended the edge there until that edge went away and these were two blended colors. Then you do the same between the yellow ochre and the pale yellow and blend that edge right there until there wasn't a line between them. And then between the yellow ochre and the black brown to blend that edge right there. So you can blend, but think about how small those blends would have to fit in there. Those blends are in less than a millimeter of space in order to not overtake all these colors, right? Because we're working in small areas. If I were to blend them, they have to be very tiny blends, right? But you could do it. He does it. He proves it every day, right? So yes, you can blend, and yes, if you want it to look this shiny and you want to blend it, then the blends have to be in really tiny areas, like, oh my God, just the width of the brush tip to blend those two colors together by creating a third color that makes it look like it doesn't just go from bright to dark and you see that line of color in between them. Or you leave it like this and you don't blend at all. This goes back to that previous question. Is a bad blend worse than no blend at all? You don't have to blend at all and can get great results, right? So again, don't get lost in the idea that there has to be a particular technique used to make it art. You know, again, I'm bringing all of our conversations into one here at the end of the day, right? Treat it like you want and play around with it and see what you get. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Strauss says, honestly, the zero blend looks amazing. It has a different look to it, right? It has a different feel. It evokes a different response than the blended metals. They both can look fantastic, right? That's what we try to prove here every day, is that it really is up to you because it's all subjective. If you learn a technique to a point of confidence when you're wielding it, you can make it look fabulous, whatever it is, right? There are people out there that can dry brush models amazingly where I wouldn't even be able to tell they really dry brushed it. Right? Because they love the technique, they've built up a tremendous amount of confidence with it, know how to use it 15 different ways, and I know 2, right? And so they do it, and it looks amazing. And then they tell me they dry brush the whole thing, I'm like, liar. And then they show me, and I'm like, holy hell, that is awesome, right? Every technique, when put into a professional's hands, and by professional, meaning somebody that's practiced it and built up a confidence with that technique, can look amazing. So you don't have to blend at all if you don't want to, right? I just showed you. You can do Thanos, and you can do no blends at all. Bam. And you can paint every model in the world like this. Your whole collection could have 0 blends on it, and people would be astounded. Your collection will look amazing, right? You can do all sorts of things. But you have to have a confidence on how to pull off the same things we talk about all the time with 0 blends, right? And work around the inadequacies of pulling off a particular effect, and how to do 0 blends, and then use techniques in ways that aren't taught normally in order to pull that off, and just start playing. That's why I love painting in general, because it's like harnessing chaos. You can use it however you want. You may see me do a particular thing on here and be like, oh, wonder if I used it like this, if that would work. The answer is always maybe. Try it and see, right?
Going back up here, a couple questions. Do you carry a brighter silver than just silver, trying to find an edge highlight for a sword?
A brighter silver than silver. Our metallic medium is like a platinum. It does not have a ton of pigment in it, so you have to use a couple of coats along the edge, but yeah, that would work great.
Yep.
You can also put like transparent white into silver. We'll brighten it up and not get rid of the metallic sheen to it, so you can play with that too if you want to mix. But the metallic medium works great for that. It really does.
Mr. Blue, is there a rule or a way of thinking to determine how many colors you need for shading, like on the Thanos?
I think we did this in 4.
4?
I think everything I limited to 4 colors or less on him. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4.
In that style.
Oh no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Because there's black, brown if you do a super zoom.
Yeah.
If you look here on his chest, you can kind of see it. It's done with 3 colors, right? In my way of taking 3 colors and turning them into 5. There's black brown, yellow ochre, and pale yellow, right? Because the black brown mixed with the yellow ochre gives us this second color, then the yellow ochre by itself, then the yellow ochre mixed with pale yellow, and then pale yellow by itself, right? So it's 3 colors, each color blended 50-50 with the color next to it.
Yeah.
So that I get, the black brown is that darkish stripe right there. Then next to it is black, brown, and yellow ochre, right there. Then yellow ochre on its own over here. Then yellow ochre mixed with pale yellow right there. And then pale yellow by itself right there. Right, so 3 colors, but 5 stages. And I chose to do 5 stages. I don't know why. I'd be lying too if I told you. Probably just because I thought that gave the right feel for the brightness of gold. Gave me enough mid-tones to make it, have some depth. And then on the jade part, I think was probably dark blue, jade, and bright jade. And the same thing, I have the dark blue mixed with jade, and then bright jade. Maybe I didn't mix anything between those two. Or maybe it's turquoise. I don't remember what the colors are. But same process that I used on everything here. Right? Even the base is done with just like warm gray, dark warm gray, bright, and then probably bright neutral gray. So believe it or not, that model probably used 9 colors total. But looks like it has 15 or 16 colors used. Because you just blend them together. Works like a champ.
Non-metallic metal scares me. I'm working on my first OSL first. I think it's kind of necessary to for reflections. Thanks for the encouragement.
Oh, heck yeah.
Honestly, after Paint Liquor, that was Little Billy. Paint Liquor says, honestly, after spending a year on non-metallic metal, I have no desire to go back to true metallic metal.
Sure most of the time, when it clicks, you don't return. I mean, I still use metallic paints, right? As a way to teach people things like that.
Would you do that for speed now? Mostly?
No, it takes me longer to use the metallics and get them the way that I want to than non-metallic. That's why I paint everything non-metallic.
Got you. Okay.
It's rare that I use metallics. I would use them on armies where the army was legitimately just there to play a game with.
Okay, got it.
And that I wasn't concerned with like how great the army looked.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just trying to get models on the table and have them be painted. Then metallics, and I do like a coat and a wash. Right?
Gotcha.
Coat, highlight, wash. Treat it like normal, quick painting idea.
Got it.
Because non-metallic gives me so much more of what I'm looking for, which is that control. I want the control over the look and feel of every color because I like to think of what we do as painting three-dimensional photographs. And a photograph captures a moment in time of the life of the subject. The model doesn't move. Time doesn't move whenever you're looking at the model.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so you're capturing the light.
However the light
was at that moment, right?
Yep.
And so if I paint with metallics, it can get it done quicker, but it doesn't give me that control of the light at that moment because the metallics give me the light of whatever room they're in at the time. Doing this, that shine is always going to be exactly where I put it on his leg, no matter how I turn or face the model or what lights in the room look like or whatever. It will always be brighter where I make it brighter, darker where I make it darker.
Papa Chicken has another question here, a little bit longer one. Mixing non-metallic metal and OSL. Would you paint up whatever metal that's facing the OSL item, like a secondary light, and then add the OSL color on top of that? Or would you want to build up the OSL lighting separate from the regular zenithal light seen in the non-metallic metal usually?
I'm going to have to read that one.
Yeah. That one, I've got it for you right here.
That didn't make a lot of sense to me. Let me use the paint on the brush here, guys, and then I'll take a look at it.
Mo saying flame on set really helped me a lot with gold non-metallic metal. Yep. That is definitely what it's for. There's also a lot of just good colors in that for other things too.
Yeah.
But it is
Tons.
I love that set. I love all of our paints, but
Tons. Okay, let's go back to what we were
here you go, right
being
here.
asked. Mixing non-metallic metal and OSL. So OSL on non-metallic metal. The mixing word threw me. Because that's not really mixing, that's just doing an effect on non-metallic metal. Would you paint up whatever metal that's facing the OSL like a secondary light and then add the OSL color on top, or would you want to build up the OSL lighting separate from the regular zenithal light seen in non-metallic metal usually? So every light source will cause a reflection on a surface that is reflective, and then how bright it is depends on how polished the surface is. So I would typically paint the model with the non-metallic taking into account all of the light sources, which I think is what you're asking. So if it had a light source like what we're doing here, which is just, daylight or whatever's outside kind of a feel, right? Then I would start doing that, and I would paint him up like this. Let's say the Spear of Telesto had a big blue glow on it. Then I would also make sure that as I was painting, I had a little bit more of a light source along this side of the leg where the spear might be close to, maybe the hand, but not really, probably just here on the leg, right? And I would brighten this up more so than normal because I have a light here, and light is 360-degree globe from its point of generation. So I would, look at my brush, use my brush as the ray of light. It would come, like back towards here, and it would hit this entire leg. Right? And so I might over brighten this and just paint it as normal and then layer the light color on top of it like I would, right? So unlike painting non-reflective surfaces like, say a leather or a cloth, I would just paint the cloth as if the OSL didn't exist. Then I would go back and add the brightness to the cloth with like a transparent white to represent that brightness of the OSL source, and then layer color over the transparent white. That's the easy kind of poor man's way to create OSL. It works like a champ every time, right? You'll see El Miniaturista and all these people use it that way. It's great for non-reflective surfaces. Once you're into reflective surfaces, you have to distinguish the dark and light reflections on that from every light source to start with, including itself, right? Remember that every time there's a bright point of reflection on one of these armor panels, that's a light source, because that's bouncing that light bright enough for it to brighten that area up, which means it would brighten up other areas around it. So you also have to treat the armor itself as a secondary light source to highlight other areas of the armor. Right? That's where it gets crazy for some people to think about, because now you're like, oh my God, brain explode.
Yeah. Papa Chicken, sorry guys, feel a bit like I'm dominating questions, but all this non-metallic metal talk has my brain going and trying to make connections. No worries at all. It's funny. Non-metallic metal is a big, I would say it's one of the bigger questions that people have, like, where do I start, right? Like it's hard to conceptualize sometimes. So the questions
100%.
are always welcome.
100%.
Because I'm watching it too, and I'm like, well, at the end of the day, you just have to try it out, right? That's another big one. I know some people were saying it's a little intimidating. It is. You just have to give it a whirl,
Well, and that's why I wanted to kind of attack this model in the way that I'm doing it here, so you can see that it isn't just some mad science that evolves and then is perfect. Here I'm working it back and forth, playing with a little brightness, putting then a little darkness, then going back and playing with a little bit more brightness, then a little bit more darkness, right? So that I can, hopefully you're seeing that you can just kind of figure it out as you go. You're not ruining anything by putting a little bit more paint on it.
Flapjack Nickelsack, did he just add a wrinkle or two to my brain?
Hopefully.
Orky fish meat. So am I getting this right? Thinning with water will make a chalkier look versus using a clear medium. So does water also make it a matte look at the same time? Chalky matte.
No, I mean, water and medium will both, have the opportunity, depending on what the medium is, to create the chalky look. What creates the chalky look is thinning it to the paint, thinning the paint to a point where it is less opaque, and then putting too much material on the model so that as the material cures, the pigment floats around randomly and clumps up because there's too much wetness and you're not putting down a nice consistent layer. As we glaze, right? So if I take a brush load, well, let me get a bigger brush, right? If I use water or medium or whatever, the medium will try to help it, keep it in place a little bit better. I'm going to ruin my paint spot here, but right. If I thin my paint down and I get a whole lot of really thin paint, and then I go and try to paint my model without controlling the amount of moisture I have, now there's going to be these big blotchy areas of pigment on there that as I try to smooth out, right, get more or less. Now obviously the hair on my hand is over amplifying this effect, but see how the pigment builds up against these details on my hand, which is the hair, because it's so wet. This is what causes that chalky weird effect. You still have a thin layer of some pigment behind that becomes that kind of, skim milk look, but then it builds up over here, right? Because it caught on a detail. It caught on a low spot on the model. It caught on a detail of trim on the armor, whatever it is. More pigment piled up there because it's just floating around in too much wetness, right? Like a wash almost. Then as this cures, it won't be consistent. It'll be chunky and chalky, right? Does that make sense? So what you want to do is first get rid of most of that wetness. Then when you come over here and you glaze that same color, I won't have that same problem because now I have less wetness going on the model surface and I can just smooth it out. So I have a more consistent form. See how there's less of the wetness hitting up even against the hair on my thumb here? Right, so now it's going to be a smooth layer of color. The chalkiness then would just be the color you're using. If you're using too bright of a color over too dark of a base, it might look a little chalky when using our matte finish. You don't ever want to glaze like white over black. That doesn't make any sense. Just paint gray, right? That's really what you're trying to do. So, but if you're trying to do this, it gets clumpy, cloudy, bad. And then when you get rid of most of the moisture, wick it off of the brush so that when you're going and painting, you're getting a nice, even consistency. See, even though I've taken most of the moisture off, I'm still getting that bright pale yellow to glaze on my hand. And that's what makes glazing look good, right? Number one, go over like my skin with pale yellow works because the skin is bright. The pale yellow is brighter. It works as a color. If I tried to do this bright color over black, it'd be chalky no matter what. That's just a bad idea.
Lumberjack Tim, my matte medium is at my P.O. box. Can't wait to get home to get it. Nice.
Fantastic.
Shark, wicking the water off the brush was a game changer for my glazing game.
Everybody that I have taught says the exact same thing. And it's one of those things that as painters, we're just so used to doing it however you do it, you don't even think about it. And you're like, I don't know why you're having problems glazing. And it's like, oh, because you have too much moisture hitting the surface you're trying to paint with. It's like if you were trying to paint a three-dimensional surface with watercolor, right? It just doesn't work. You've got to get rid of all that wetness.
And would you say that's the main culprit for the chalkiness, essentially?
100%.
Okay. It's interesting because a lot of people have asked this question, right? Like chalkiness comes up a lot. So hopefully that helped.
100%. And with our paints, it's frustrating for people when they first try them because they're thinning the paint as if it were our competitor's paint that needs to be thin just to use it because it comes too thick. And in order to put it on the model without getting brush strokes and filling in details, you need to thin it, right? So they start thinning our paint for that. And then they start adding more thinner to get it to be translucent. So now it's ultra wet paint, which our paint will still paint that way, but now it'll be so wet that if you're not used to wicking it off and controlling the moisture on the brush, then you're going to get such an amount of dampness on the model that it's almost impossible to move it around correctly. Remember, Pro-Acryl comes ready to use. We make paint for models, period. Like, we don't make paint for houses. We don't make paint for any other kind of industry. We make paint that is meant to go on three-dimensional, fine, detailed surfaces, and it comes out of the bottle ready to do that. Whether you want to airbrush it or brush it, it's magic. So if you don't want to be able to see through the paint, you don't have to thin it too much to get you there. We still have a very high level of opacity, but you don't have to waste a lot of time thinning just to use it correctly. It's just ready to go. One of the best things about Pro-Acryl. You don't have to mess with it.
I'm kind of light bulbing it here a little bit of like, because I've heard you describe certain situations for the chalkiness, right? Like when people ask, right? But that it's kind of making even more sense right now for some reason to me. It's clicking a little bit.
Good.
Especially like the wicking off the moisture before, taking off some.
Yeah, you just have
water.
too much wetness, and that wetness is not good for anything, right? Because we're not trying to put puddles of paint on our model. We're trying to put nice, even, thin coats on the model. And people stop recognizing that thin does not mean pooling up, right? We talk about there being two types of thin. One is viscosity, and other is opacity. Thin for opacity is what you want most of the time, right? You're trying to thin the paint so that you can see through it, layer it, or whatever. When you're thinning for viscosity, it's because the paint doesn't work the way you want to. You want to shoot it through an airbrush, it can't be as thick, so you thin for viscosity. That also thins for opacity, right? So they both have the effect of doing the other, right? If we thin for opacity, we're going to thin the viscosity of the paint when using water. That's why that's why we make our glaze wash medium, because the glaze wash medium keeps the viscosity of the paint the same, but thins it for opacity. You add a clear liquid that is of the same thickness as the paint to the paint. Now the paint becomes more clear, but stays feeling like paint. That's why you use the glaze wash medium, right? I use water for everything, but by doing so, every time I'm thinning to be able to see through the paint more and have it be less opaque, I'm also thinning its viscosity, which makes it more like water. And that's harder to control, which is why I tell people the easiest way to learn your glazing is to not do what Uncle Jason does, use the glaze wash medium, right? Because until you reach that level of confidence where you can control the dampness on your brush, the glaze wash medium will prevent that chalkiness. To the person who asked in chat, they say, okay, so if I use a medium, I avoid chalkiness. Not necessarily, but it is the better way, because you're now not thinning the viscosity of the paint. You're only thinning the opacity, was what you're looking for when glazing.
And Colonel, going off of that, do you have a process to remove the wetness from your brush? Do you use paper towel or just your hand?
My thumb palette.
Yep.
I have a whole video on it that Chris put
here.
up on YouTube.
I'm going to copy it and paste it to you right
that
now,
shows
Colonel.
you why I paint on my thumb. It is 100% for what we're talking about.
And to also
that right there is where I wick all of my color off. It shows me the opacity of the paint I'm currently using, right? Because if I go right now at the opacity I'm using, this pale yellow, right, is very opaque. So, but it still has more on the brush. See, that dollop of paint on the end isn't going to make a nice fine line. If I try to take that much paint, do a super zoom.
Yeah.
It'll give you the idea. Like if I wanted to just edge highlight that spot on his arm, that's way too much paint. Look at that. It's a drop of paint. If I touch an area of the model, that drop of paint is going to want to go on the model. And now I have too much paint for that little bitty fine line there. So I come over here and I say 1, 2, 3, right? And get most of that paint off of there to where now I don't have a big droplet of paint on there anymore, right? And then I can come over here, right? And now I know I'm not going to deliver more moisture to the model than I want. I just get a nice, fine highlight line. Boom. Stays right where I want it. Nice and crisp. Boom. Done.
It's funny because the thumb palette video also uses very similar colors to what Jason's using right now.
I've been painting so much gold lately.
Yeah. It's literally the same color, I believe. But Colonel, yeah, that link will take you to it. A lot of good info in here, folks.
A lot of me wishing I would have put the Spear of Telesto on later. People ask me about sub-assemblies, and I'm like, nah, who needs them?
I always have that fear, too, of sub-assembly. It's like, it's fine. Once I get there, you're like, oh, this is underneath the thing.
Yeah, it's like painting, playing Operation right now.
Yeah. Anytime, Colonel. Yep, check that out. Here's a question. What ratio of paint flow improver should you use while airbrushing with these paints?
We use our glazed wash medium and maybe a drop or two, but I find myself spraying without adding hardly any.
Mm-hmm.
That we're in a very dry climate here in Arizona, where HQ is, so it just is kind of a subjective to taste thing. If you want to add more because you find that you're getting tip dry, that can be everything from the amount of humidity in your area, the PSI you're running your airbrush at. So there's no like good silver bullet answer, unfortunately. I would say that in a simple term, I would do 1 drop of flow improver, and then some water.
Yeah, Colonel, after trying to apply Jason's method for painting faces with 3 stripes, I discovered that I needed to up my glaze game ordering your glaze and wash medium. It's awesome stuff.
It really is. Its whole goal was to keep the paint feeling like paint while thinning for opacity. Because one of the biggest problems people have, like I said, is that if you thin the paint for opacity to glaze with, so you can see through it more, because that's your goal, right? But you also thin the viscosity of it. A lot of people aren't familiar with the control of paint at low viscosity. Trying to paint with water is very difficult. It takes a totally different set of skills to watercolor paint than it does to paint with oils. And the bulk of that is because of that viscosity and opacity question that we're talking about.
Orky Fish Me, I saw that warehouse job at Monument, thought about packing up and just moving to be near this talent. We appreciate it, Orky.
That's awesome. Thank
pack
you.
up. Arizona's beautiful. Today is a beautiful day.
Oh my God. Days like today, you're like, yep.
This is why we're here. We got a little bit of rain coming potentially this week.
Nice. I saw that.
Yep. Today was cold. It's got a little, the weather's up and down this week, but overall it's very nice. Chris, I can't help but notice since Jason is back, not a single Monty Python reference has been made. I told you, little Billy, you only get a couple of those. I will not dance monkey dance. You only get a few of those, chat.
Got a Gunner on my brush.
A what?
Gunner.
I'm sorry.
The little dot of dried paint on one of the ends of the
is that what is okay
filaments.
Where'd that come from? Is this a real a Gunner? That's scientific.
Trust the science, Chris.
A Gunner. Okay. All right. Sucks that all of this is lost on poor Chris. Oh, Orky, here I am trying to pitch up a nice moment with you, and you've crushed me. Colonel, I should just link my wallet to you guys since I've been buying everything from you guys. Tried your primer this weekend. Life-changing. Both primers are amazing. Which one did you use, Colonel? The airbrush or the can? The spray can.
Or the new brush on.
Which we demoed last week, which is awesome stuff. You have 3 options, chat, to prime.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking, like, the brush on primer, like that they have in the past. We've said you can use our airbrush primer for brushing on. What we found is that newer painters had a struggle because they weren't ready for that first layer to be so transparent, right? Because the brush-on primers are going to be like painting with skim milk on the first layer. They just don't give good coverage. And for people that are in the know, they don't even worry about that. You put down the first thin layer, then you brush on another layer. Bob's your uncle. Everything's great.
Bob's your uncle.
For people that don't understand that, they put it on, they're like, oh my God, this looks like garbage.
Yeah.
So we knew in our starter set, we really wanted to be able to do like a brush on primer because again, like, and also what do you do when you're a painter who's getting into the hobby for the first time?
Don't have an airbrush, don't have
an
rattle
airbrush,
can.
you know?
Yep.
Don't really have a knowledge base of how this stuff works, but are being told I need a primer for my models. What do I do? Well, here's one you can just use with the same brush and everything you already bought, and it just works well right out of the bottle. A little more difficult to use than an airbrush. It's not going to be as smooth going on. You'll have to watch out, make sure you don't pool it up in all the details and stuff like that. But
Jason, just a quick question for you. What's the science between the differences of the brush on and the airbrush?
Sciences?
Yeah, like tell us more about like the formulation a little bit.
A little bit heavier urethane in the brush on to get it to have that bite, right? And then just a little thicker viscosity. That's really it.
Okay.
The things that would make it not airbrush great are the things that make it brush great. It's just like our paint, right? It's like our airbrush primers have to be like pro acryl with more urethane, so they act like a primer. Because that's what you want as a primer, to have that grip and that tooth to it, right? So that's what they do. But it's the same way that you don't, if you thin our paints for airbrush, right? You can't then use them to brush on as well, right? Because you've now done everything we just talked about, which is lower the viscosity and lower the opacity, right? Now with the airbrush primer is a little bit different because we haven't lowered the opacity on them. They're very opaque at a very low viscosity so that you can airbrush with them. And by virtue, you can brush with them, but like I said, that first layer kind of skates across the surface of the model a little bit more. Yeah. And makes it harder to control and definitely doesn't look good. It's not that it has any problems, but sometimes you're fighting the fact that when people look at it, it looks wrong. And so they think it's wrong. They think it's bad.
Yeah. That is a good
and we fight as a industry with the fact that most people in our hobby don't come from a background of art. They come from a background of wanting to play cool games.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with that at all. But it makes it a little bit of a struggle to teach people how products work, because some of these products are not, going to look, a lot of people that are new to the hobby and don't paint and things like that on the regular will not understand the dumpster phase, as Kenny calls it, right?
The dumpster phase,
ugly phase of models. They won't understand that you go through a period where not everything looks great in order to get to where it looks great. That's just a thing of art, right? You see artists all the time that talk about how there's a point in time in every piece of art I create that I absolutely hate it, right? It's not what I want it to be just yet, but I know that if I persevere and have the patience, it'll get there. And that's true of me, true of just about everybody I know. There's a point in time in every project we work on that we absolutely hate what we're working on.
I hate this phase.
Yeah.
I hate this. I want to go home phase.
But people that have not done art very long aren't comfortable with that phase because they think they've done something wrong or that the product's not working, things like that. And, you can imagine customer service at Monument Hobbies is always like that. It's always like, oh, no, that looks perfect. And they're like, no, it doesn't. It looks like horrible. I'm like, no, just keep with it. Trust me. Do this, and then try this, and you'll love it. And then they come back and they go, oh, my God, thank you. I nearly gave up, not realizing that, I was achieving something awesome. Because that's just something you have to learn. Again, you can see like my little specks of shine are starting to make this. Look at this leg right here. Look at how the shine on the shin coming over the knee gives you that directional lighting. You can already tell that from over here we have brighter light, right? Because at this angle, I get my mid-tone shine, right? On the non-reflective side, or still reflective, but on the non-light side. And I get that halo of light around the leg and the foot. So as I'm sketching, I'm starting to get the feel and see the fruits of your labor as you work through it and put these little spots of brightness. Just this little bit of sheen on the knee down here starts to show me a hard metal surface. I'm starting to get that reflective quality built up. This is all part of dialing it in.
Little Billy, that one was pretty savage there. I know exactly what you mean about hating the current step of process. Can't wait till you guys get a new producer. Dang, Little Billy buried me. Gosh, I can't take away your points fast enough. Minus $1 million.
Right, well, Billy, there. I want you to think of something with me here.
Oh God.
No matter how bad it seems for you,
no,
on your end.
No, here we go.
It's always worse for me.
Oh my gosh. Oh no.
It's always worse for me, Little Billy. Just want you to know that. Just wanted you to know that.
Wow.
I'm not trying to play the martyr here, Little Billy. I'm just saying that there's always somebody out there that's got it worse. So maybe just hold on to that derision you've got for Chris and leave it to me.
Here's a good question from
Chris is like, now to deflect that
I'm
to
sorry,
something completely different.
I'm over here trying to pitch up real questions and I have to deal with Little Billy. How would you go about painting a layer of subcutaneous fat around the edge of a ragged wound? I've started with a mix of warm yellow and yellow green, but it looks more like infected than fat. Fatty, not fat.
Yeah, believe it or not, I like things that move from like, orange browns, almost the color that we're using here for this gold, right? I wouldn't go to warm yellow. That's too irregular of a coloring, right? That's too like a jaundiced color. I think that if I were doing it, I would want to see it be more of a kind of a tan with yellow. So browns and yellows, orange, brown, yellow. And for the yellow, I'm talking like yellow ochre maybe. I wish I had a model I could pull and reference, but I think the only ones I have done were years and years and years ago in a box someplace.
Jason, I have a few death shroud terminators sitting in my drawer. Any suggestions on tackling super iridescent models like them with tons of unique tiny details?
Death Shroud Terminators are from what?
Here you go. Here's
why would I know this?
Sorry, not iridescent. Intricate models. You said Death Shroud, Shark? Death Shroud Terminator sitting in my drawer. Any suggestions on tackling models that have tons of unique tiny details? Intricate models.
Patience. That's really it. It's like I'm doing here, right? I'm trying to find all the little gilded, like I've got to come through here and do little teeny pinpricks of light in spots where I might have, even on the darker reflected side, I don't want to do like the entire area, but just little pinpoints of light to pick things up. So it really is just that patience, that need to define each material and then determine how much you want to do with it, I think might be the biggest thing. And by that, I mean, you could choose on a model that has, say, 50 million doodads. If you highlight each doodad dramatically and paint them all to the nth degree, the model at some point in time gets that clown suit what I call the disco ball look. It's just too much. So some of the details only need minor attention. Some of them need major attention, and that's for you to determine. And sometimes that's the hardest thing, because there's, on some of those models, there's like so much cool detail.
A lot of details.
But you got to be like, okay, what is important and what can fall into obscurity and not matter, or get just a single layer of color, maybe a mid-tone instead of, a mid-tone and a highlight. You just have to be careful with how you identify all those parts that are important to make sure they're seen on the model. If he's got 50 million pouches, maybe you paint, 1 or 2 of them, and the other ones just kind of exist in obscurity, so to speak.
Alex is asking, what needle size do you recommend for your airbrush primer? Blown away by the quality of your paints, by the way. Oh, thank you.
Thanks. I paint with a 0.3 for damn near everything. I'll break out our number 2 every now and again if I'm doing close in work, but it's not something you need to do. And on the primer, the number 3. Our primer is what I call a lighter feeling primer. Like all of our paints, it's meant to be easier to use right out of the bottle. And so you don't have to add anything to it. And it also flows better, so a number 3 works. For other primers in the past, before we made our own, I would have suggested a 0.5. So if you're using ours, then a 0.3 for sure. And we've had people on stream tell us they use the 0.2 needle for our primer. Yeah, look at that shot now of that leg.
Yeah, it looks great.
Compared to all the other stuff I haven't painted.
You definitely can see where the light is coming from, for sure.
Right. So, and you can see that it's a reflective surface. Whereas this, somebody mentioned earlier, this just kind of looks like yellow paint right now.
Yeah.
Right. This is that level where if you stop here and you don't punch up to that brightness, this just looks like yellow paint. When you punch up to that brightness, you skip a bunch of steps of blending and you just go from basically this mid-tone yellow to what is more or less a white in the bright pale yellow. That's where you get your shine. You can't do any colors in between those, or you lose the idea of reflectiveness on the surface. So I hope that's starting to show.
You definitely, the light direction is very obvious, which definitely makes a big part for that.
Well, yeah, and if you look at how we're doing this differently than we did. I know the scale is different, but look at the difference between these when we look at the reflective nature of the gold here versus here. Here I have much more stark contrast between my darkness. You can see this dark reflective line right along the thigh and down the shin and the foot, which makes it appear shinier than anything over here. Right? This is more like brushed aluminum. This is something that isn't polished to the high sheen that this armor is. This armor is more mirror-like.
Yeah.
Right? And this has less of that going on. So that's a definitive view of what the difference is when looking for things and how reflective they can be. This is more reflective than this. This still has highlights, but notice how the highlight on this armor, the way we did it, is blended out further. From the brightest area at the top of the shoulder, it blends over a long area before it gets to darkness. Here, my brightest area is literally a line of paint that then has a dark line sitting right next to it. There's no blend there. And both are equally valid. You just have to make a determination. How do you want it to look?
How shiny do you want this armor?
Yeah, how shiny do you want it?
So going back to the fatty question, so maybe yellow ochre or orange brown mixed with olive flesh or khaki?
The khaki might be a little too yellow. I think I would oh, you know what? Maybe you do the yellow ochre as a base layer and then mix the khaki in with it to get your mid-tone. And then if you wanted it wet, you could use the pale yellow as kind of a dot, highlight, where I would just use a specular highlight, like little dots of brightness on the curvature of the fatty cells to make it look like they're little, shiny globes or something like that. So then you can get away with it like that. Because the yellow ochre, let's pull those colors out, right? Because yellow ochre is a fairly dark yellow. right? And then if we look at, ooh, something like warm flesh might even be better. That might work well, right? But khaki could work very well here too. Where's my khaki? Khaki. So khaki has a more greenish tone to it, but those might work. Like that could work really well. That could work really well. Hell, you could use all three and figure it out. This feels right though, because this gives you your shadow layer. Nothing super shadowed there, but this could give you a shadow layer, and then you work up to this, and then like the bright pale yellow for like a highlight on it could give it that kind of gross fatty feel, but without as much green as what you were doing with the yellow green, so it doesn't look quite as sickly, quite as bruisey. If that makes sense, I would do that.
Super Duper John asking for a Rhinox hide equivalent.
Like warm brown and black brown mixed together would be really good for that.
Blood Brothers, thank you so much. That really helps.
Yeah. Keep the questions coming. Good ones today.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have been neat because they all tie in together. I get to have the same conversation, hopefully ring bells and set off light bulbs for lots of people asking lots of different things, which is great.
It's interesting because as we read all these questions, you start to see the similar questions have similar answers, but they all tie back into very, I don't know, how do you put it? They're all very related, right? They're just asked in a different way, but we're trying to look for the same thing. So yeah, keep them coming, you guys.
Well, hopefully a lot of people find that, I keep saying things like value, viscosity, opacity.
Yeah.
These are the things we're dealing with. So if you focus on learning those things, right, half the battle's won.
Yeah.
It really is, because you're like, oh, yeah, if the viscosity of my paint is at a place where I really like it, I can do anything I want to do with it. Works like a champ.
Big old fly in here.
Yeah, he's flown by us all the time.
He's like, me.
I keep hearing him.
Like, I want to be on the show. March challenge, we talked about that earlier. It is going to be painting up a unit with a minimum of 3 guys. Basically, we want your team, your squad to be in the same story, essentially. Have a very similar feel. We were painting up a unit last week or a week before that, so definitely check that out if you haven't seen it yet.
This fly.
I know. I see him. There he is.
Oh, wow. he's a honker. Right, he's a huge guy.
A big one, too.
See, like I can already tell you on the top of this arm right here, notice how I don't have any dark reflection. So look how different it looks from the leg down here, right? So I'm going to need to put some more darkness on here to get the same level of reflective quality going like I have on the leg, right? Because this leg has got all sorts of dark reflections mixed in with my bright reflections. This arm doesn't. We over brightened it. Right. So now when I put the brightness on it, it's just super bright yellow. It doesn't get dark until the underneath, and that's not the part that you're going to see.
Yeah.
So this is part of that balancing game that we play.
Whiting, yes. Mordheim band, okay. Yeah. As long as they're essentially, we want them cohesive, cohesive unit.
Team, they need to look like they're in the same world, doing the same thing for the same reason. That makes sense.
Yep. You could OSL the spear, ass Papa Chicken. OSL the spear. You could just The spear of Telesto that Sanguinius has is such an awesome weapon in the books. Shoots giant laser blasts out of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, Sanguinius in the books is literally like the baddest of the bad. I love his character in the books. I never cared for Blood Angels or Sanguinius or any of that. They always just seemed like a cheap method to get vampires into sci-fi. And then they started writing things in the Heresy that were like, oh, like this guy's a great character. A moody bastard, but not as much as some of his brothers.
Orky Fish is asking, what's some good color combos to keep the traditional looking green and tan of Astra Militarum look?
I mean, I'm a big fan of our yellow greens. Faded green, yellow greens. For the tans, any of our light umber, khakis, colors like that work great. We just did a tank, right? And the tank used all of our camo greens, dark camo green, faded green. And it gives you a really neat military green that could be used for Russian, American, Japanese, World War II style greens. So depending on how you're doing your Astra Militarum, you could choose to do something like this. It would look great. If I were going to do Astra Militarum, it would be this. I would do it exactly like we just painted this guy. Because to me, this is the best military vehicle color, right?
Yeah.
It's tank green. Makes sense to me. What's so funny over there?
I'm reading. Little Billy just said, Chris, after some research, I've learned we were walking the same campus together in 2015. This rival started much earlier than I thought. Little Billy, you're a lumberjack. I did mine online, so I was not there.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh's right, chat. Jason, it's already 3:52.
No.
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Holy
Today,
cow, talk about my first day back flying by. Wow.
yeah, it is 3:52. And I haven't even said it today, but welcome in to everybody who is just now tuning in. And where have you been? Last week, we had a big week last week. We started with Jason. Then we went over to a Jordan. We demoed our brush on primers. Day 1 of Jordan. Day 2 of Jordan, we demoed our matte varnish. And if you haven't tried that, it's awesome. Day 3 and 4, we continue painting Kamar Jinn, which we also released our Age of Angra miniatures last week. So if you haven't gotten your hands on those, give the store a check out. And now we have Jason again. So it's come full circle, chat. And I'm going to post this link right now. There you go. If you missed those miniatures, that is the link. And now we're back here with Jason.
Stuck with me again.
That's right. We had a great time with Baby J, but, you know.
I have to admit, I was a little off-put by the fact that I showed up in chat on Friday.
Oh, you
and
did?
got completely ignored by Christopher.
No, you did not.
I did.
Wait.
I came in and made a comment. I came in and made a comment about adult Jay Gabbana.
Wait, you want to know what's funny? Because I told this to Jordan. I'm like, hey, if Jason, I'm assuming Jason will hop in and out of chat all the time. If Jason replies as me, as Monument Hobbies, as Jason, as Monument Hobbies, how does it look on this? Because I'm right here in the chat manager.
It would have been Monument Hobbies.
I didn't see it. Yeah. I would have totally seen that. I didn't see it, chat. Don't. Oh, no.
See what I have to put up with, chat?
What did you say? What did you say?
I talked about adult Jay Gabbana.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I missed it.
I told him the model was looking great.
I'll fire myself for this one.
I was trying to be uplifting.
Hey, you know what, Jason? There's something that's such a great segue of what you just said there.
What?
Sometimes you have to be uplifting.
Oh, here we go,
right?
chat. What's he about to
Sometimes you need encouragement, right? Sometimes you need
what's about to happen, chat?
What do we call it? Like, like when you're there for somebody. Sometimes you need a little bit of feel goods, right?
I'm not
sometimes
gonna say
a little
yes.
therapy.
I'm not going to say yes to anything right this minute.
Well, once you're done painting, I have something to show you. Chat, I have something to show Jason that I found this weekend that made my weekend.
Chat, I'm very scared.
Yeah, get ready, chat.
I'm very scared.
Are you ready, Jason?
Sure.
Oh, that doesn't sound... Jason,
I'm
check
never
out...
ready. You know what happened last time he asked me if I was ready?
That's true. I'm about to one up this again. Jason.
That's what I got last time I was asked. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Sometimes, you guys used to have something called Therapy Thursdays? Is that mistaken?
That you're not mistaken, we did. What is this?
Show the chat.
What is...
Show the chat.
What
okay, chat. This is a little...
How are you feeling today? How does that make you feel?
It's Therapy Thursdays.
Between now and the next time we meet, I want you to start a journal.
It just goes on forever, dude.
Keep going.
There's a good one.
Let's dig into that more in our next session.
I just thought this was the funniest thing.
What do you think would make that better?
Dude.
It's so good, dude. He goes on forever.
This is like when people ask questions in chat, we just go,
Why don't you spend some time reflecting on that?
That's what I'm saying. Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones.
why don't you spend some time reflecting on that, chat?
I'd like you to talk more about that.
Keep going.
Tell me about your mother.
Tell me about your mother, chat.
That's all the time we have for today.
Hey, perfect timing. That's all the time we have today.
Look at that. Wow. There you go.
So here's what I get from Christopher. I get therapy. Did he just fart too?
No, he just says, uh-huh.
Oh.
He says, uh-huh.
So you go,
What kind of changes would you like to make in your life?
Anyway,
That feels too real, Chris.
I know.
That's kind of like my life going on right there.
When I saw
Tell me
it,
about your
I'm like,
mother.
This is the best thing ever. Oh my gosh. There it is, chat. You only get a couple of these.
Our Magic 8 Ball's in my office. That's how I run the business.
That's right.
Like legit right at my middle monitor. I have 4 monitors technically, but the 3 across the front, right in the middle is the Magic 8 Ball, and that's how we run the business at Monument Hobbies.
That's right.
Is this a good idea?
Yeah.
Signs point to yes.
If we didn't have that 8 ball, chat. Oh my gosh. Well,
Somebody needs to take a picture of my desk because the Magic 8 Ball is literally right in front of it. Can we get a Magic 8 Ball can?
oh my gosh. Anyway, just a little fun for the end of our stream.
Everyone, thank you so much. So go ask if you should make Flamon's other set says Sugar Rush. You're an engineer. You're gonna start using the 8 ball to answer questions. Yes, you should. It works every time.
Should be included in school.
Every time it works like a champ. The Magic 8 Ball has only been wrong like 10 times. That's fewer times than any of our employees. So still hired. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with us. Happy to be back. Sorry I missed you last week when I was at Gamma, but thanks for taking care of adult Jay Gabbana, baby Jay.
That's right.
And not letting Chris get too wild.
That's right.
Keep
me in line.
Yeah, kept him in line. I appreciate that, chat. Checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you had a wonderful weekend and that your week is off to a great start. It is only Monday, and remember, we do this 5 days a week, so you're stuck with me for 4 more days this week. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here in Phoenix, Arizona, direct from Monument HQ. Glad to be here. Make sure to check out all of Chris's links he put in chat. Check out the store, the FLGS link for all the local stores near you that carry our wonderful products. Please give us a shot to be your hobby supplier. That's what allows us to keep doing all this awesome stuff with you. So thank you for all the support. Stick around. Chris is going to find somebody to raid who will be doing some hobby goodness into the evening. Show love as you wind up in chat there. Support them, hit that follow button, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow. Adios, gang.